A union for prison officers believes taking a softer approach to dealing with inmates, including using their first names, is upsetting the prison hierarchy and leading to more guards being assaulted. The Corrections Association, or CANZ, says prison officers are being encouraged to call prisoners by their first or last names as part of a shift in the justice system aimed at treating inmates in a more human way. Some prisons are using the Māori word Paihere instead of inmate. It means to bundle or tie together. I asked CANZ President Alan Whitley how he would address an inmate.
We generally call prisoners, or refer to them as prisoners, and use their surname. Now, corrections are moving towards the term of people in our care, Paihere, Manihere, and a few other words that aren't actually in the Act.
So what's your specific problem with calling them people in our care, for example? Because they are, aren't they?
Well, they're in our custody first. We definitely care for people that we have in our custody, and we've got to treat them with humanely and with dignity, but predominantly they're in our custody. There's a warrant that holds them in prison.
It's just a turn of phrase, though, isn't it? Would it hurt to call them people in your care?
Well, if we have a look at the assault stats for the last 12 months, they've gone through the roof. So something's changed in the last 12 months, and corrections officers are getting assaulted at an alarmingly high rate.
What do you think's changed, Alan?
Well, I think we've softened our approach to prisoners.
Just in your language or in other ways?
Oh, I think in other ways we're trying to make sure that definitely the prisoners in the forefront of everything we do, but in the forefront of everything we do over the top of safety.
So, how does calling an inmate by their first name, are you advised to call them by their first names?
That's what they're recommending. So that's what it does, is it breeds it breeds familiarity with the person. So a prison needs to operate on a hierarchical control when things go wrong, and you've got to make sure you're maintaining that all of the time.
Can you not maintain order and call someone by their first name?
It can get difficult. You start to breach over the point where are you friends with this person, or are you actually there to make sure that they maintain the law and discipline while they're in a prison?
So what is your preference? Is it to call someone simply by their surname?
It's to follow what the Act says. The Act terms the person in custody in prison as a prisoner. If there needs to be changes, then change the Act.
So just to be clear, if you were wanting to give an instruction to an inmate, would you go, excuse me, inmate, excuse me, prisoner, or would you say, use their last name?
If you knew what their last name is, you'd use their last name. Otherwise, you'd call them prisoner.
Isn't that, well, some people would argue that's dehumanising.
Yeah, they may do, but it's what they're defined as under the Act at the moment.
What specific issue do you have with calling them by their first name? How do you think that alters the hierarchy of the prison?
Well, that's generally what you do with your friends.
Or people you might be wanting to give instructions to? It's a way of identifying the individual that you're speaking to specifically?
But there's a possibility of that. I mean, the instruction that's been given out is it's up to staff if they want to do that. A lot of staff don't want to do it.
You mentioned this word Paihere. How has that come into the language used in the prison, and where has it come from?
I think it first came out of Tongariro prison. I'm unsure of the actual origins of it.
And again, what is your understanding about what this word means, and what's your issue with using that?
The issue is if somebody to charge somebody in a prison, first thing they have to be is a prisoner. And that's per the Act. If somebody charges somebody for being a Paihere at a particular prison and then the offence, that charge may not stand.
But Te Reo Māori is an official language of this country, so are you sure it wouldn't stand up in court?
Like, the Act talks about a prisoner, so...
But the prisoner is still a prisoner, though, aren't they? Regardless of whether you call them by their first name or their last name or another common phrase.
Yeah, we used to have the term inmate in the Act, and that was changed to prisoners, and we were all instructed we could no longer use the term inmate in the charge because they were prisoners and we had to meet compliance with the Act.
Can you explain to us what Paihere means?
No, I can't. I do not know what it means.
Have you been told by the Department of Corrections to use this word?
They use that word in a lot of their official correspondence.
Have they explained to you what it means?
No.
Have you asked?
No. Like I say, we're happy with whatever they use as long as it's consistent with the Act. If that's what they want to use and they put it in the Act, we've got no issue with it whatsoever. We just don't want people using one term in one place and then not being able to use it in another place and legal paperwork falling over.
So I suppose the Waitangi Tribunal and the Justice Minister has talked about treating prisoners in a respectful way. So are you prepared to change the way that you refer to prisoners? If there's no legal issues attached to it, you refer to the Act there, but if you were able to call them by their first names or by some other terminology and it wasn't going to have an effect on their legal status, would you be comfortable with that?
Yeah, we'd obviously be comfortable with that, but the other thing that needs to happen too is correction staff are getting assaulted at an alarmingly high rate. So we're talking about us respecting prisoners. Let's see some respect coming back from them. Reoffending starts in jail. Stop the offending you're doing in prison by assaulting prison staff.
Alan, do you think calling prisoners by their first names is fuelling the assault rate?
Look, we don't know what's completely fueling the assault rate, but in the last 12 months it's markedly increased. And
so what do you think that means in terms of calling prisoners by different names? Do you think there's any connection?
It's around about 12 months ago a lot of things changed where we started to soften the approach that we took to prisoners.
And you think softening language is part of that?
It could well be. Like I say, it's unknown at this point, but we want to stem the rate of assaults that are happening in prisons at the moment.
And that was Alan Whitley, who is from the Corrections Association, talking there about, calling inmates by their first and last names.